Anywho, Moni, who is next?
All right, up next we have Metal Arena. It's a long one, so let's strap in for this. This was on the 17th, so they're responding to your new video uploaded on YouTube about changing Sylvanas' story. Their question is, in the video you talked about how long they need to make a CGI cinematic, so after the last CGI cinematic they made, they must have begun working on the next one, about the original Sylvanas story before the change.
Yeah.
However, since they changed her story, they didn't have enough time to remake the cinematic, so, like you said in the video, so there must be a very good reason for them to change her story, otherwise it was a total waste of money or time.
Yeah.
What was that reason, or did they not even start on that new cinematic?
Okay, so they would have already started on that, and you are correct. It must have been a good reason. Now, there could be various reasons for it. Reason number one could be that... so there is a world in which they didn't start the next cinematic yet, because they weren't sure what the story for Sylvanas was ultimately going to be. They had ideas, but they haven't really solidified any of those ideas. That starts to fall apart when you realize that usually by the time that we get a new expansion, the next expansion is already well into development. So they would have already known pretty much, for the most part, what they wanted to do. The better theory that I have around the scrapping of the CGI cinematics and ultimately all of the in-game cinematics and how the story changed is time. If you look at the story of Sylvanas and you look at all of the story that was supposed to come for Sylvanas in order for a lot of these things to make sense, it becomes clear that they needed at least one more full patch. At least one more full patch. And then, of course, you would also need a lot of sort of add-ons to the original patches in terms of story. But there's many stories that's been sort of very rushed and cut that didn't make a lot of sense for it to be included in the first place, like Helia and Odin. You have this entire build-up of Odin and Helia, and it all turns out to be a giant big nothing burger, with Helia just being one of the bosses in the raid, and that's it. It's sort of like, well, why did you build this up then if that was it, right? What about Odin? What about all of this? So none of that plays out. We also have leaks from people. Squeal on Heart. Thank you so much for the Prime sub. Did really appreciate that. Welcome to the DJ Nation. Appreciate you, fam. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So there's that entire sort of... there's more of that. So Korthia, for example. Korthia is set up as this giant city of secrets. Korthia takes almost 9 months to complete. And it turns out it's not really a giant city of secrets. A lot of the story of Korthia makes no sense because it doesn't really go anywhere. It offers a very sort of surface level story to Korthia. Nothing goes into detail whatsoever. So all of that, all of that turns it into, I think, an educated guess at this point that content was cut due to time constraints. They realized that in order for them to do the story the way that they want to do it, they don't have the time for it. There's just no time left. And it might not be... So time obviously is relative because they make their own time. But it feels like they already gave up on Shadowlands and they were moving on to Dragonflight. If you look at how polished Dragonflight was when we first learned about it, and you look at how quickly Dragonflight went into its alpha, beta, and now into launch, it's clear that they spent a lot of resources on Dragonflight. So I think Shadowlands is another example of World of Draenor. It's another World of Draenor where they gave up halfway through development, put a skeleton crew at best on the game, and they basically told the developers, listen here, do the story at least to the point where it kind of makes sense. We don't really give a shit. Yes, we know that you had all of these great plans and you had all of these great things laid out, but we don't care. Just get this shit done. It's all we need. Get it done. And it's highlighted by another. So a few things actually. One of them is all of the cinematics that we saw in Shadowlands. We first saw as unfinished. We saw them still artifacting all over the place, and we were talking like a few months before launch. Usually speaking, those cinematics are ready months before launch. The cinematics we saw, the ones with Sylvanas, the one with Anduin and the Locket, and Anduin and Zuval, we saw with these giant red crosses across the screen, and you saw artifacting, and you saw the colors not working, and there were no voice lines with them, there was no music or sound or anything, or things would be left out and broken, and it was sort of all over the place. So it was clear that these cinematics were works in progress. They were done at rush to just try and get this into some sort of a cinematic in order to make it make sense. And then, of course, the best example of rushed cinematics would be Garrosh. I mean, the Garrosh Hellscream cinematic was just miserable. It was so bad. And not because
quality was bad, the story was good.
Yeah,
I mean, they did it.
The context and the message of the cinematic, as Moni just said there, brilliant. So fucking cool. Unapologetically orc. I will never fucking apologize for anything, right? So fucking cool. But the quality was dog shit. And then, what was it, like a day later? Some fan from the community redid the whole thing and actually made it a good cinematic. So it's clear that a lot of things were rushed. And I feel like that's why. They didn't have the time. They needed to... They just needed to finish what they needed to bring it to an end. And they had to choose the quickest way to do it. Hopefully, that is why Shadowlands' story also kind of sucked. Is because of that rush. Is because they had to go so fast that a lot of things just sort of got left out. Another sort of, let's say, another piece of evidence that I can use as pointing towards this is the like a few times actually it got delayed. The novel, the Sylvanas novel, got delayed quite a few times, and I think it got delayed for the exact same reason. They needed to add things. They realized that they're not going to be able to tell the story the way that they want in the game. And so they had to do additions to the book to get it out, right? I think that may be why. Now, that is a giant fucking, 5-head theory. Because generally speaking, the way that books launch, that would not be possible. Because... if you're gonna do rewrites, books will usually need, or publishers usually need like a year in advance to get the printout and to do the publishing and all the rest of it. So that is sort of, let's say, on the weaker side of what the evidence would be, but it is entirely possible, right? Dark Angel, thank you so much for the 2 months update. Really appreciate that. 10 months in a row. Thank you. Yeah, it is out now. Fluffy, thanks for the first time chat. Really appreciate that, brother. Wow, you guys have already 5 new members to the fucking DJ Nation. Appreciate you. Thank you. Well, some new, some not, but really appreciate you guys. Anyways, I hope that answers the question. And remember, this is just a theory. I could be completely fucking wrong. It could be that this was always the plan, that they wanted to try something new, because CGI cinematics are very expensive. And while, yes, really cool, and I'm sure Blizzard would love to do more, they are expensive, and in many ways they are a needless expense. Because while they're really cool, are they enough to keep people playing? Are they enough to turn a bad game into a good game? I think the answer is no. I think we know the answer to that is no. Yeah,
I agree with you to the extent that they are using the cinematics, in the sense that they get leaked really early.
Yeah.
If they had kept them under wraps until the very end and maybe just used the cinematics, like the CGI ones, as just toppers for like topping off a expansion or topping off a patch or topping off like the end of the quest zone, then they could be magnificent. But as it stands, they let it leak and they just don't seem to care.
I mean, they would be magnificent, but I still don't think it's the difference between a good and a bad game. And no. I would say Blizzard should do far more, because I'm going to be honest with you, I love the in-game cinematics as well. They're so well done, especially with the new technology where the mouths finally work the way that they're supposed to. They're so well done, and they're so fucking incredible. I don't think they need the CGI cinematics, so there's also a realm in which that's just why they didn't go with the CGI cinematics, because they have this new technology that makes it look really good already. So why would they spend millions of dollars on a cinematic that isn't required of them? So there's also that, where this was always the story, but, you know, whatever. It just happened. And pineapple on pizza is the greatest thing ever, Cesius.